there anyone who speaks English? Sexia, I was the one who said that I gave me problems, difference for me anytime.
We are professionals, I respect you, but on October 4th, I'm going to hit you. I'm going to hit you in the face with an open hand.
All right, so we have the somewhat anticipated rematch between Pereira and Ankalaev coming up this weekend. And I call it that because the marketing for this bout has been pretty much non-existent. It's been pretty buns. The only real morsel of buildup we've gotten for the fight was this immensely awkward encounter at the PI, where Ankh tried pressing Pereira for the online shade being thrown, but neither of them share a language they can both speak, so they had to use Google Translate to trade barbs.
Какая девушка сказала? Ну-ка, покажи мне ее. Я был на процедуре вообще-то.
Ele falou assim, que a menina falou isso para mim me mostra que eu tava fazendo o tratamento.
Pô, eu vi no vídeo, velho. É. O vídeo a gente filmou, não era conversa.
Mostra pra ele que tá no vídeo do YouTube. This may as well have just not been in person. But anyways, lack of hype aside, this is a very consequential fight card coming up. It's one of the better assembled cards of the year by a pretty decent margin, and every fight on the main card is pretty damn good. We got Joe Pfeiffer versus Abus Magomedov opening up the main card. Should be a pretty good scrap, with some top 15 implications at middleweight. Josh Emmett will either usher in Yusuf Salal as a top contender at featherweight by getting his face pitter-pattered off, or send his orbital bone into orbit. Yuri and Roundtree will probably be fight of the year, and whether I like it or not, will probably determine who's next in line for the belt. It should be Olberg, but you know how this goes. Marab will most likely wipe the octagon floor with Sandhagen's anemic torso after a couple competitive rounds, but it doesn't mean I don't want to see it. I want to see what kind of tricks Corey can conjure up from his spellbook, you know? You never know with that guy. Then we have the main event, where the stakes are fairly high. Will Pereira learn from the mistakes they made the first time and put more of a pace on, try and secure a bounce-back knockout win over Ankh, which would usher in part 2 of his light heavyweight reign, because there's no way in hell he'd accept that trilogy? Or will Big Ankh just kind of double down on what he did the first time, armed with the knowledge that he can beat Pereira to the punch without even needing to resort to grappling that much, and has the confidence that he can take Pereira's power while also being able to rock him with his own, and thus ushering in a much less exciting but sure to be dominant reign of his own at 205? Well, I'm sure plenty of us have gone back and forth in our minds on how we think this one will play out. But I think the cold, hard, stabbing truth has been staring us in the face for the past 6 months of that fight. Magomed Ankalaev is going to do Pereira even worse than the first time. This was always going to happen. This has been years in the making. And in fact, this honestly could have happened much sooner. Ankh has always been in the shadows, just quietly clearing out some contenders here and there. And it's kind of crazy to think that it took him this long, until 2025, to reach the title.
So, no Shama, let's go. October 4th.
Well, why do I think this one will be more or less the same as the first fight, if not more definitive for Big Ankh? After all, the first fight was pretty damn close. Some people were crying robbery, as they do every time there's a close fight. And there are, a good few caveats one could attribute to the outcome of the first one that would make you think Alex has a better chance this go round. Like he wasn't training as hard as he could have been, apparently, so says him. Or his insane activity in 2024 led to his body not recovering enough going in, or he was so tentative about the takedown threat that it led him to barely throwing anything, but he was able to stuff all the takedowns, so with that confidence he should do a lot better, right? Well, sure, I have no doubt Pereira will make some adjustments and will probably make it a faster paced fight, but saying all that stuff kind of just detracts away from what Ankh was able to do in there, and even if you take all of them away, does that really nullify how well he matches up with Pereira? Or are you just going to assume that the same things he did last time aren't going to work, or be more effective? Ankh literally barely had to threaten the grappling to keep Pereira on his toes, and yes, Alex defended all of those attempts very well, but the bigger issue was Magomed was clapping his cheeks in the boxing. Straight up. Ankalaev has better, faster hands than Pereira. Better footwork, better timing on the counters, and better defense when things came back his way. Whenever Pereira tried anything offensive, Ankh would just blast him with combinations. There were a couple rounds where that didn't happen, but the middle chunk of the fight, yes. Pereira was dangerous enough to keep him honest and keep things from getting too out of hand, but I wonder how different the pace of this fight will be with both guys gaining some confidence. Alex knows he can handle the takedowns, Ankh knows he can handle the power. So I think this will likely be a much more entertaining fight than the first one. First one was kind of tepid, but in that higher pace, I just feel like the big Russian bulldozer will thrive a lot more. He's just too fast, and with the takedown threat being there at all, he's honestly just an all-around awful matchup for our favorite favorite Easter Island headband. The only way Alex is winning this is if he catches Ankh, which if anyone can, it's him. He has that spooky equalizing power. But if it's going the stretch, Big Ankh is more or less just gonna have his way with him. Pereira gets hit way too much across all of his fights, even the ones where he decks his opponents in a couple rounds, whereas Ankh doesn't really. That doesn't really happen. He's gonna win this fight. I'm sorry, he is going to win this fight. I know it's sad, it sucks, it's no one's desired outcome, but it will happen. The whole Pereira run at light heavyweight is one of the coolest things to come out of the last couple years in the UFC. This stone-faced assassin was just laying out everyone, aura-mogging, saving events left and right. He etched himself as the de facto face of the promotion by just doing what he did best. Bludgeoning people. Nothing corny, nothing fake, nothing too flashy. It's all stoic violence. We're all gonna remember his era as one of those you had to be there type scenarios like Charles Oliveira's rise, or Volk versus Makhachev 1, or Masvidal in 2019. It was fun while it lasted, but I can't help but feel like that whole period was just him basically keeping the belt warm for Magomed. Literally the only reason we even got this run at all is because of the clusterfuck that was the light heavyweight title picture in 2022/23, which I actually covered in my first video in this style on this channel if you want to go check it out. Video sucks ass because I didn't really know what I was doing, but if you want, you can go watch it. But long story short, Yuri is champ, vacates the belt because of an injury, so Big Ankh fights Blachowicz for the strap, but it was a pretty shard-ass fight and ends in a draw. So they book another title fight between Hill and Teixeira the next month. Hill batters him, becomes champ. Then Hill himself vacates later in 2023 because he also gets injured. In the meantime, Pereira gets a close win over Jan Blachowicz, gets title shot against Yuri, wins, becomes champ. So it's not like Pereira didn't beat the right people to be the rightful king, but it was a fucking mess. He'd then take out Hill at UFC 300, which meant he'd struck off 3 out of the big 4 names necessary to put that whole fiasco to bed. Everyone except one man, Big Ankles. I'm of the opinion that Ankalaev should have won that fight against Jan Blachowicz. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find someone that disagrees with that sentiment, and I think that had he won the belt back then, he would still have it right now. If it wasn't for that pesky draw, then there'd be none of the madness that led to that Pereira shot, and none of the cool spectacle that we got after it. Ankh would have had the belt, he would have slaughtered Old Man Glover, beaten Hill, probably beaten Yuri, and then Alex Pereira fresh up a weight class, not quite used to the weight yet, yeah, he would have beaten him then too. He's been the boogeyman this entire time, he was just forced into the background. Dana wasn't all too pleased with Jan or Ankh after their fight kind of sucked weenus and it just threw everything into chaos. And I can't say I totally blame him, but let's just say it was going to take a lot for either of them to claw their way back to the top. At the time, Ankh in particular had wins over Nikita Krylov, Volkan Oezdemir, Thiago Santos, and Anthony Smith, which at the time was pretty damn good. You'd think with the streak he was on that surely just one more fight would have had him back in there for the belt sooner than later, but instead he'd be put in there with Johnny Walker, which ended in a horrible doctor stoppage, so immediate rematch was necessary, fine, but then he would be forced to get another win over Rakic to further stake his claim. And in the meantime, Pereira was just cleaning house against fellow strikers and putting on a show in the process. From a business perspective, it made all the sense in the world to favor those matchups over this one. And I do think that Yuri and Hill both deserve to get in there first. They deserve to get immediate title shots since they were both good sports and they relinquished their belts when they were injured. And the Yuri rematch wasn't too ridiculous either, you know, short notice, and the first fight ended in controversy, so that's fine. But by the time we got to the Roundtree fight, that shit was straight up ridiculous. Awesome fight, don't get me wrong, but passing up Ankh for that was just too obvious at that point. They held him back as long as they could, but eventually they were forced to give him his day in the sun, and here we are. And I expect he will further stamp his claim on the 205 throne by flattening Pereira even worse than the first time. Sorry,